took the exact same amount of time it would have taken for us to call roll anyway. We're going to be continuing chapter 2 today, so we're going to be keeping things at a pretty good clip. Actually, pretty excited. We're talking about some of these economic systems. Now, guys, in terms of the 5 environments for business, I thank you guys for all submitting your assignments. I think everybody is in on time, which is awesome. I have not started grading them. I'm hopefully going to start grading them today. Today, however, is the last call for revisions on your LinkedIn page. If you're in process of making changes that I'm working with you on, you're good. If you have not looked at your changes yet and not yet looked at my feedback in Canvas, you have until this Wednesday to do so. I really want everybody to get a 10 out of 10. If there's stuff that is keeping you from getting a perfect score, come see me if you don't understand my feedback. When you make changes, email me and let me know. The profiles are looking good. In terms of the 5 environments of business, I'm hoping to grade those by the middle of the week. But this is a pretty dense week, too. The one thing I am going to ask, guys, from here on out, when you submit an assignment, with the exception being discussion boards, when you submit an assignment, please submit it in Microsoft Word, not just as a text entry. When you submit text entry, I can't easily edit your work. When you submit it as Word, I can give you feedback. Now, I did something else, guys. I moved our next 2 assignments back. The economic systems exercise and the online discussions are no longer due on the 20th. They're due on the 23rd. So I moved them back a couple of days so that we've got some time to cover that stuff in class. We're going to do that on a regular basis. Guys, a reminder, this Wednesday you have a rare opportunity to see a really, really good speaker, Ms. Michelle Singletary, I should say. She's a Washington Post columnist. And she is going to be doing a CES presentation. So you can get CES for it if you need CES, but you can also get 2 bonus points on your first test just by going and signing in or scanning in, whichever they have for us there. It's going to be a great session. I strongly encourage you to come this Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. JFK. I will be there with my evening class. I'm actually making my graduate class go to this presentation. Guys, something really big happened in the news this weekend, and I'm not talking about the GM strike. I'm talking about a different kind of strike. What am I talking about? Anybody hear what happened in Saudi Arabia over the weekend? What happened?
There was an attack on the oil fields.
Yeah, knocking out about half of production. So we're going to start off with a little... Is the price going down or up? It's going up. And now here's the trick. Oil has been on a slide for about the last 3 or 4 years. We've had an oversupply and an under demand. So here's what's been happening, guys. Saudi Arabia is part of a group of nations that all produce oil together. Do you know what that's called? It begins with an O. It's called OPEC. And so they're a group of producers who basically try to control output. Now, these folks have been hitting a lot of disagreements the last few years. So instead of acting in a unified front, they've been kind of competing against each other. Now, part of this, where politics crosses over with business, there has been a lot of debate whether or not Iran is actually responsible for this as a government or if it's a group from Iran, meaning a terrorist cell that does not represent the government. Either way, what is Iran's vested interest in the price of oil? Why do they care? Yep, that's the main part of their economy. And for about the last years, the Trump administration has been doing what with Iran in terms of what have we been doing in terms of managing that country? Yeah. Yep, we basically have been putting all kinds of economic sanctions on Iran. So Iran is starting to feel some of the pressure because we essentially have an economic embargo. We're not doing business with them, and we're not doing business with people who do business with Iran. That's a whole other political can of worms that's beyond the scope of this class. But the bottom line is you may be asking yourself, well, I'd like to from this side of the room. It's not Saudi Arabia. Who is the world's largest producer of petroleum at this point in time?
The United States.
We are. So we're thinking to ourselves, if we've got this great supply of petroleum, why are prices going to be going up for consumers at the pump here? Why is that, guys? Why might they still be going up here? Because we've got our own oil supply. So why are prices going up here? Well, some people would argue that. The bottom line is a global market. So it's global supply and demand. So something that happened in Saudi Arabia could actually affect us here. Here's the trick too, guys. When we think about the price of oil, it's not just the price of driving to work. From this side of the room, how does the price of oil drive up the price of other products? Anybody have an idea? I know you look like you want to answer this question. Yeah. For sure, plastic is used, petroleum is used in that. What else is petroleum used in, guys? That's me doing a Johnny Bravo dance. I don't know if you guys even know who Johnny Bravo is. Trucks that supply stuff. If we have trains, what power sources in the United States? Diesel fuel. So everything that goes into transporting goods and services is dependent upon the price of oil. So when the price of oil goes up, the price of transportation goes up, the price of wholesale products goes up. Who ultimately bears the cost of these price increases? Who do you think? The consumer. So this is where global events can affect local economy. Now, President Trump says he's hoping to open the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We usually keep, I think it's between 90 and 180 days worth of petroleum in the United States reserves for these kinds of events so that the consumer doesn't feel the pinch. But that only lasts so long. If we had an extended oil outage, it said in the article, rather, that about half of the biggest refinery in Saudi Arabia was hit, which means we could see a downturn in production for a given point in time. And here's the other trick, guys. Because we're the largest producing nation of oil right now, we also do export a lot. So places that were getting oil from Saudi Arabia will now be getting oil from us. And if you're selling a product at a profit, you're going to sell it to the highest bidder. So we could see some of our excess production easily going offshore. Any thoughts or comments, guys? What do you think? Is this going to be something we're going to be feeling impacts from in the coming weeks, or do you think it's going to be a flash in the pan? What do you think?
I think you're going to see gas prices going up either way. Because if they can use this as an excuse to raise prices too,
I agree.
increase your margins.
Well, let's think about something too, guys. Does anybody here know? And guesses are much appreciated. If you had to guess the average economy for the average vehicle sold in the United States, how many miles per gallon? You took all cars on the road, from a Honda to a Toyota Prius, all the way to an F-350. What is the average fuel economy in the United States? Yeah, it's actually lower. It's about 23. Does anybody know when the Model T Ford came out, the very first production automobile, mass production automobile in the United States, anybody know how many MPG it got? Oh, it was better than that. It was actually 23. So in over a century of the automobile, we haven't increased the average fuel economy because some vehicles are getting so much larger while some remain small. So yeah, we are still dependent on a global system of supply. And even if we're producing more than anybody else, when something happens around the globe, it affects us. Any thoughts, guys? Thoughts or questions? Sir?
Is there a reason they're blaming it on Iran, even though there's a terrorist group taking credit for it?
When I say this without political judgment on anybody. I look at this strictly from a PR standpoint. I think the current administration has some marketing reasons or PR reasons behind vilifying a country that would further. This is a complex answer to a simple question. When the current administration came in, one of the things that they campaigned on was getting rid of the Iran nuclear deal and the idea that traditional sanctions would be more effective than this deal, which they found to be ineffective. And I think this is a way that they can further say, see, we were right about this particular group. I think to say that Iran is a problematic enemy of the United States or a problematic nation in the United States, you could argue those points for sure. I think just blaming the country for this might be an oversimplification. And I think sometimes there's an expression in journalism, and that expression is when it bleeds, it leads. And what that means is simple bad news grabs attention more than complex news stories. There's always more to the story. Guys, when you read the news, I know that the popular term these days is fake news. Regardless of what side you are on the political spectrum, look under the hood, do your research, and see what really is driving the decisions that are being made. That was an excellent question. Did I answer your question? Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think we stand to gain. Well, I guess from their perspective, the country stands to gain a lot from painting Iran in a very bad light right now.
And it's very easy to think in black and white terms, good and evil, and it's hard to get into nuances in terms of we do a lot of business with countries, for example, that maybe aren't great people either. It's just a matter of who's falling in or out of favor too. So, any other questions or thoughts, guys? Always examine what's behind the decisions you make. And here's another really good trail to follow. When you're following the news, follow the money. If you can see where the money goes, you can answer a lot of the questions. Guys, we left off talking about capitalism. And I'm going to start off, because this class is so much about capitalism, this side of the room, tell me one good thing about capitalism. One good thing. Yes? Competition and the consumer benefits. This side of the room, tell me one bad thing about capitalism. Or negative. What do you think? Yes?
Sometimes greed can actually hurt consumers and other employers.
That's exactly right. We can take it too far. So the positives are we got competition. The consumer usually benefits. The bad part is we can't have corruption. We can have things like the Ford Pinto, for example. We can have Dieselgate from Volkswagen. Car companies seem to be wrapped up in this a lot. And we have fewer safety nets. That's where socialism comes in. Socialism is an economic system that is still based on democracy, still based on voting, but the idea that most people can't own businesses. So in a socialist economy, people can own some very small businesses, but most large businesses are owned by the government. The citizens pay a lot out of their dollars in taxes to be able to pay for all these services. Now the good news is, if you're poor or not earning a great living from your day job, you get taken care of. The bad part is, if you're somebody who is earning a good living, you're paying out a lot in taxes. Now England, for example, is a capitalist economy, but they have a lot of socialist values. They believe in national health care. Guys, here's a trick. If you think about big stars from the UK, whether it's going back to the 80s and you got bands like U2, or you can think about even classic rock stars like Elton John. Why do you think those folks become U.S. citizens? Or do their banking outside of the UK? Yes?
So they keep their money.
You got it. The average dollar in the United States. Here's a trick for you. We're going to say this side of the room, you guys are the United States. If we took everybody who was earning, out of every dollar you make after taxes, how much do you get to keep? Any guesses? What do you think? How much do you get to keep out of every dollar you earn? Take a guess. Make it wild. Anybody want to help? Yes?
93.
It's not that high. It's closer to right around, depending on where you're at and what tax bracket you're in, it's about 65 to 70 cents. This marker's terrible. I think somebody is like sniffing my markers in here. I don't like that at all. So 65 to 70 cents per dollar. Okay, we got our group over here that lives in England. Now, England's still a capitalist economy with a lot of social services. Out of every dollar that you guys make, or every pound, I should say, but let's say $1. For every dollar you make, how much do you guys take it home? That's about right. So in England, you're taking home less than half of what you make because you're paying out the rest in taxes. Now, that's not a complete linear equation because we're also talking about things like benefits. When we get into socialist countries, it gets even higher, though. Guys, in terms of some of the countries that we think of as socialist, Denmark is a great example. Now, there are countries, for example, Sweden is actually talking about paying, it is Sweden, it's talking about paying a living wage. The idea being that everybody in the country would get a wage of $2,000 a month from the government to do nothing. So their thought is it will spur on innovation. People will do cool things, and it's cheaper than administering a welfare program. What do you guys think? Is paying a living wage to your entire population who doesn't do anything a good idea? What do you think? Tell me your opinion.
I say no. I think it's an incentive for people not to do anything at all.
So that to me, that's a prevailing wisdom too. There are some people who would counter to say, well, if I had $2,000 a month, I'd make that startup company. Or I'd try making my life as an artist. Or I would do this, that, or the other thing. I would like to see a real financial analysis, what it costs to run social programs in our country. And at times we have to separate our ideals, which is, I think most of us believe that people should work for what they get, our ideals versus reality. In fact, that we might be paying more to actually administer some of these programs. I tend to be a fiscal conservative. I tend to be a person who believes that people are motivated by their achievements. If we have to work for something that has value to us. I could be proven wrong. Anybody else have an opinion? Yes?
Seems kind of backwards to me. Because you're going to give 2,000 to every person, every working person is going to have to give more than 2,000. And every working person, even though they're getting a check for 2,000, they're actually still running a deficit.
That to me is the best counterpoint to this argument. And so the best idea I think on this whole scenario is let another country try it and see how it works out. And the other thing too, guys, we've got different cultural aspects that come into this as well. For example, in the United States, we work longer. We have a longer work week on average than any other country in the industrialized world. In Germany, They have, for example, they have initiatives now to say if you work for Volkswagen or BMW, you can't get your email after working hours. They want people to have free time. And they have one of the highest amounts of mandated vacation in the world. In the United States, would that be feasible to say you can't check your email after working hours? Would people? No. Most of our American culture would not buy into that. And by the way, guys, the United States, how many mandated days off do we get a year? If you had to look at the federal government, how many days off can they make your employer give you a year? Yes?
Isn't it about 2 weeks?
So we got a guess for 2 weeks. It's lower. It's lower than that. Yes?
None.
It is absolutely none. There is no rule that says you have to give anybody paid time off. Now, we do have something called the Fair Medical Leave Act, which is unpaid leave. People in the United States, there is no law saying you have to have a single day paid off. So you literally can work for an employer who does not give you days off. Now, they got to pay you overtime if they're working more than 40 hours a week, but there's no rule that says you have to have a day off. So some of the benefits of socialism, I mean, it's right in the name. Social means society. Well, theoretically, if we go back to the roots of socialism, it means everybody's kind of equal. We're all pulling for the same thing. You get free education, you get free health care. Some of these places even have free child care. And we also see a heavy presence, by the way, of unions in socialized environments. So we have people, for example, who are members of labor unions. And it's ironic because the next class I teach is all about labor unions. But guys, the concept of a union means what? Who knows what a union does? Yes? It's the idea that we as employees will collectively bargain. It means that if you guys were members of a labor union, you would all come to me as the boss and say, these are our list of demands. This is what we want in our contract. And you have leverage over me because you're negotiating as a whole. I leave that to the individual to decide what they believe about unions, but we see lots of unions in socialist economies. Now, here's one of the problems we're running into in highly socialized economies, and that is we have brain drain. Guys, why do we have brain drain? Brain drain means that your best and brightest are leaving because they can go somewhere else to make a better living. We see it a lot of the time. For example, we see a lot of doctors coming to the United States because the ability to earn here is pretty unparalleled. When I say this with great love and respect to our neighbors from the North Canada who have a great healthcare system. But doctors in Canada generally make less than they make here, and a lot of doctors will come here. We see doctors from India, for example, coming here. We see innovators from around the world. By the way, guys, when we start talking about work visas, letting people into the country, what is the #1 profession that we're letting in right now in terms of trying to get people to move to this country? Anybody have an idea of what we're running short of? What do you think? Think about high demand professions right now. Yes?
Doctors.
Well, doctors for sure. We're running out of specialists too, by the way. I'm thinking of something on the other end of industry. I'm thinking that's something that you guys all carry around in your pockets. Well, yep, technologists. People who can do security, people who can do programming, people who can make the technology that's going to power our economy. If you can do that stuff, you can find a pretty easy path to citizenship in the United States because we're running out of those folks. The other part of it too, guys, the spread between the wealthiest person and the poorest person in a company in capitalism is generally greater than it is in socialism. You have less potential to earn in terms of total wealth that you can increase, and as a result, there's sometimes less innovation as well. If you go to a truly socialist country, you may see a way shorter ice cream aisle than you see in the United States. And then we get to the ultimate extreme, which is communism. Communism, on paper, is that you have a centralized economic system where all decisions are made by the government. In capitalism, if we're a company, how do we decide how much to make? How much do I decide how to make if I'm in a capitalist economy? What do you think? Yes?
Whatever the people agree with.
You got it. Supply and demand. If I can make more and sell more, hell yeah, I'm going to make more and sell more. If I'm in a communist economy, however, how do I make a decision? Who's making the decision about what we make? Yes?
The government.
You got it. And how are they making that decision?
Based on whatever they want it to be, basically.
That's a great answer, by the way. Let's put it this way, guys. For one thing I've noticed about all of you guys, you're very stylish. You like to dress well. You guys look good. You have lots of choices. You can buy whatever you want. Where do you guys like to shop, by the way? When you go shopping, where do you guys like to shop? Yes? Nordstrom. Okay, good choice. Anybody else? Where do you guys like to shop? Easy question. Everybody likes to shop. Where do you like to shop?
Online.
And wherever you're getting a good deal for a product you want. You have lots of selection. Anybody else have a store where they like to buy their threads? Yes. Hollister. So you guys are liking high quality brands here. Well, these brands compete against each other. You guys are a key demographic. You guys are the 18 to 22-year-old crowd. You don't have big, intense jobs yet. You've got some economic power, and you're cool. You like the cool new stuff. You're the brands. You're what brands want to pull in. In a communist country, if you've got a match on supply and demand in the form of the government basically saying this is what we're going to make, how stylish is clothing going to be in a communist economy? It's going to be functional. It's going to probably be colors that everybody can wear, maybe blue or brown. We're going to have basic items. What it leads to, guys, is we have shortages. I'm going to give you an example of what a communist car looks like in a couple of stages. But guys, we basically have an entire economy that's run by bureaucrats and dictators saying, this is what we think we need. We run out of stuff. Guys, in the old Soviet Union and Russia, back when they were communists, in the winter they'd run out of toilet paper. Could you imagine that, guys? It's December, and you got to get through to March, and there's no more toilet paper. That's a terrible, terrible place to be. Or we're running out of oil, or we're running out of tires, or we're running out of whatever. So the big disadvantages of this stuff are that we don't have really supply and demand. Guys, we're going to do this little group exercise here. And we're actually going to do this in three groups instead of four. I'm going to be the pick your own economic system. So we're going to count off in threes. We're going to start from the back of the room today. Miss Hackett, you're number one. You're one. Two. I'm mixing it all up. All right, I'm going to have my ones gather up here, twos here, threes in the back. What I'm going to ask you to do is tell me what kind of car you're going to build. How are you going to build a car, and what's it going to look like, and why? So gather into your groups, and I will give you some personal instructions on how to approach this.
So it's super cheaply built, breaks down, very like boxy and ugly. Basically, you only get like one color, is like a ugly brown. Roll down windows, mostly like manual, no automatics.
I'm just glad you guys gave us roll down windows. At least we can put the windows down when it gets hot, because we don't have air conditioning probably either, do we? Wow, this sounds like, and we determined that car would only come in baby poop brown, so it's not even a nice brown, it's a terrible brown. I think that makes sense. Now, why are you guys making the car like this? Yeah, and because you can. You guys are the party, you can make these decisions. Was this based off any kind of economic forecast or consumer demand? No, it's based on a stroke of a bureaucrat's pen saying we're going to make this decision. We're going to go to our capitalists next. So, guys, you were debating a couple of different ways that you could make cars, and you had a couple of options. Can you tell us about what decisions you were talking about and which one you finally made?
Yeah, we were talking about either having a low-end car for like the working class and have it affordable for everybody, or a high-end car that was only for like the top 10%, and there wouldn't be a lot of like making of the car. There'd just be. But we went with the low-end class because we can make a variety of colors in the car. We were saying a hybrid car, but an affordable hybrid, so it takes gas and.
Like you use like batteries.
Yeah.
Nice. So we're already, even though we're talking about an entry-level car, we're talking options here. The comments back here got one color or roll-down windows. We're talking hybrids and colors here. Now, you had two options. You could have gone, when I say low-end, I mean entry-level or extremely high-end. Why did you pick to go for the working person?
Because you can make more profit off of it.
Potentially. Although you get some high markups here, I think your blanket statement would be because you can. If you see an opening in the market, you can make that decision and go for it. So you can sell whatever car you want. And if this car doesn't sell well, what are you going to do? Capitalists. Yeah, you're going to make another car. You're going to make one that answers. Guys, the Chevy Cruze was a small, affordable American car that was made, I think, in Lordstown, Ohio. And the factory closed because nobody wanted it. GM's still making plenty of pickups and SUVs because people want those, but they got away from the small cars. And we got our socialists. These guys had the toughest job. Tell us about the car you're going to make, guys.
It would be basic, but it wouldn't be necessarily bad. Like when I think about this, I kind of picture like just like a medium gray Hyundai Sonata. Just it has AC, it has a radio, probably can connect your phone to the radio. Like decent gas mileage, like I would say like maybe 26.
Okay, so a little above average.
Yeah.
Probably trading off horsepower to work that consumers may want.
Now, is this car going to cost more or less to make than a car in capitalist economy? And why is that? And you got technically bureaucracy. When I say this with complete love for my friends who work in government, there's more layers of authority even in a capitalist economy. Our government has higher levels of authority. Typically, private industry is more efficient. And so you've got the government involved in a car company and basically making all this stuff, having overhead on top of what you're producing. Yes?
There's a lot less competition too. Like I looked it up, and I don't know everything on the internet's true, but I'm gonna trust it. It said 99% of pickup trucks in China are Fords, so there's no competition. You're pretty much stuck with Ford.
Whatever can get in. Yeah, and that's something a characteristic of command economies we're going to talk more about, because that's obviously coming from some kind of partnership between the government and the company. Some countries such as China, even a foreign company like Ford, has to have a local partner to do business. So that might be the selected truck that gets to make its way in. Guys, really good. I want to show you guys what a communist car looks like. This is a Trabant. Guys, the Trabant was made in East Germany clear up until the end of the Cold War in the 1980s from the 1960s. This sort of baby poop brown body is made out of a substance called Duraplast. You may ask, what is Duraplast? It's literally a combination of plastic and paper mache. The waiting list for this car was over 15 years long. You signed up, and if you got on the waiting list, you could buy one. The engine was in the back, and this thing smoked from the time it was brand new. And I don't mean smoking tires, I mean literally the engine smoked. If you hit something in this car, you could repair it with spackling, because that's what people had to do. These cars were reliable. They were no pleasure at all to drive. They were manual transmissions, I think the equivalent of about 40 horsepower. Now, by means of comparison, I drive a small crossover Mazda that has 184 horsepower. This has about 40, give or take. And again, these were unpleasant cars. When the wall fell down between East and West Germany, and East Germans were flooding into West Germany, when these cars would break down, people would just leave them on the side of the road like they were trash because they had no use for them anymore. This car was made virtually unchanged for almost 40 years. So that's what a communist car looks like. At the beginning of our class on Wednesday, I'm actually going to show you a video to show you how these cars actually perform. The rock band U2 in the 1990s got a bunch of old Trabants, took them on tour with them, and on a nightly basis would smash them together on stage because they had so many of them they could take with them. It was kind of an interesting prop. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a great day. Thanks for humoring me with the walk at the beginning, and I will see you on Wednesday.